Well, great to have you today, Kumar. Thanks for joining the show. Let's maybe kick it off and start. Tell us about your background and kind of how you got into the space and where you are today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, guys. Yeah, so let me start with my background. So to start with, I have no background in the fund space, but I happened to stumble in this space, which was quite interesting. So my background is trained in computer science. Started my career in 2008 as a software developer, and from there, I started my first company in 2011. Ran it for 2 years, exited, and then moved into AI and machine learning and the product, and led product management for most of the large corporations like Wells Fargo. I was in Macy's, Kohl's, retail space, and then happened to being a first product manager, head of product at Punchh, which was also a customer data platform. And from there, got into that company grew from 0 to 50 million ARR, got acquired. Then I moved into DwellFI. Uh, uh, all these things was while I was doing. I was also involved in crypto space deeply. So I got first involved in crypto in 2011. So two of my friends were Bitcoin co-developer in early stage. One of the guy who actually received the first. He was in the IRC channel, hanging out with Satoshi. Got like first 100 people mail. When Satoshi sent the white paper, he sent it actually to 100 people first. He was one of the guys, and he introduced me to this Bitcoin in that early stage. And I've been seeing this space up and down, like all the cycles you guys, anyone who is in the crypto will see. Uh, so following this space for a long time, and then eventually, when the conversion started, is when we started DwellFi. Uh, we saw the opportunity of tokenization, real world asset. And actually, I was following it since 2016 when Polymath, and a bunch of other companies came into, and people actually realized that there is an opportunity for tokenizing real world asset. That's where we also decided to tinkering in this space, me and my friends, and we've been following this space for a long time. And then 2021, we decided to start DwellFi.
That's great. And I guess on the AI side, obviously you have a couple of commercial patents in AI. You're obviously an AI expert. Tell us more about kind of that side of things and how you got into that space.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So I got into AI space in 2000, I would say 11 or 12, something like that, in that space. So I got very interested in AI, and then when uh, the first inception model was trained on the GPUs, and then there was a hype of AI. And quite frankly, when I started looking into this space, and then I saw that there's so many companies are coming, and it was the when the deep learning started, and then a lot of companies were building image related things, and there was a lot of application was building at that time. And quite frankly, I thought like, okay, I'm too late in this space. uh, when I got into that and started learning, taking courses, went to school and all these things, and then slowly realized that now if I think that, I will say it's never too late. And because the people who are getting into AI right now, they will think, oh, it's too late because there's so much is happening. It's never too late. So that is one thing. But that led me to get into the product management in space in AI, and started working in most of the AI products for enterprise. And that gave me more exposure to how to build applications, AI applications, for enterprise scale AI. And then one thing to another, eventually I got it Punch. We filed two patents in the AI space. And then now using the same concept of all my learning and everything, which I'm applying in this DwellFi. One of the interesting thing happened is when we started DwellFi, initially the company started more like on tokenization side. And then slowly we saw the opportunity of data opportunity in this space. In the space means the financial space, and that's where we started building the AI application on top of that. It's not that just that everyone. One other thing, when we started looking into this space, yeah, there was like definitely a hype of AI, but It was not because that hype we just jumped in, is because we saw when we started building this, we have access to a lot of data in the back office side of the space, and that led us that opportunity to start building the application because that's where we saw the potential. So that's how we ended up building DwellFi, these applications which we are doing today.
Yeah. And so you got the tokenization side, you got the AI side, kind of bringing them all together. So tell us about what is DwellFi doing today? What's the
Yeah.
product? What's your kind of main offerings?
So that's a very good point. Like if you think that okay, we are doing tokenization, we are doing AI, and if you look from a broader perspective, it's like, oh, what the hell you guys are doing, correct? There's two orthogonal thing, but ideally, it's actually it's not. It's a so the whole thing is built on a data infrastructure. So let me take a step back and explain like how the tokenization thing which we are doing is a little bit different than how the other people have taken approach, and then what is the AI part. So sorry, what we do in the DwellFi, the one of the most core infrastructure is we call fund data platform. This is a similar concept of CDP, customer data platform. So the difference between customer and fund data platform is customer data platform comes from a retail space, and that's where you try to bring all the data around a customer so that you can have a single pane of glass and you can see exactly what's happening with the customer. Take the same concept and come into the fund space, private fund space actually. So you have three major pillars. One is your GP, LP, and the third one is assets. And assets are agnostic; it will keep changing in a different asset class. But the rest of all the data is all revolving around this one. So that's our concept of fund data platform, where we bring all these fund data, which is mostly, if you think, it's in the unstructured format because it'll sit in the PDFs, like bank statements, Excel. Most of them are like that, and then their accounting data, which is in Excel and all, and then you will have some databases. So we bring all these unstructured data into our fund data platform. That's where we do the structuring. Once that is done, we follow the process of data management. Then we apply the permissions on top of that, that who will have what kind of access. And then once that is done, then we have like two major services built on that. One is the tokenization service, and the second one is an AI service. So the tokenization service takes the benefit of data. How? So so far the way tokenization has been done and the approach people have taken is they tokenize a fund where they'll take the LP interest and tokenize the LP interest. Once you tokenize an LP interest, basically what you're doing is you're taking the cap table and putting on chain. The most value out from that you can extract is kind of proxy voting. That's about it. But if you want to trade that asset, the reason why you're tokenizing it to bring liquidity. Now, liquidity can be done in different ways, but let's say trading is one example. If you want to trade it, the next thing you will want is the value of that LP interest, like what it represents. And for that, you have to go off chain and you have to bring that data again in the same messy way that it is today. And then you want to do transaction. But that defeats the purpose of tokenization. You cannot like bring efficiency and all those things. So we took a different step. And what we are doing is we tokenizing LP interest along with the data, what actually is represented. So our tokens are like a dynamic NFT, and it has two parts: fungible and non-fungible. So the non-fungible part is your cap table representation of your equity ownership. It doesn't change until unless it's transacted, and the rest it represent okay, what is the NAV of that, what how many units it has, all the values related to that, documents which is signed, PPN subscription. So all these is encapsulated in that, and then we take that information and mint on chain, on a blockchain, public blockchain. But once it goes on the public blockchain, it's all encrypted, so nobody can read your private data. And if someone wants to read it, we provide them uh, a public key, like basically a private key. So through that, they can access this information. Now, if you do this, what is happening is now when you go to do any type of transaction from that tokenization, you don't have to go back off chain. You can do all these things on chain, And now once you do on-chain transactions, you can bring the efficiency. So you can faster settlement, all these things can take place. So few of the example which sorry, our tokenization does is equity swap. So let's say there is a fund, and in that fund there are multiple LPs. One of the LP wants to exit, or few of the LP want to exit, but at the same time there are other LPs who wants to buy, or someone else wants to come in. You can do equity swap on chain, update that, and then send that data back to your administrators. That way, you did the whole transaction in smoothly on chain and settlement everything. The other thing is the second example is how to bring liquidity in this market. A tokenized asset. If I'm sorry, for the liquidity part, what we do is our approach of liquidity is going through borrowing part, not working with a trading part right now. So the borrowing is because all these are illiquid assets. So what we do is once you tokenize it, these assets, we enable people to borrow against these assets on chain. So you can take your LP interest, and in the most layman term, it's like a HELOC. So you have an LP interest, you can collateralize it, and you can borrow against that. And it also happens on chain and in a ecosystem. So we have lending partners who work with the funds in the back end. And from an LP perspective, if you are a investor in that fund and an LP, you don't have to worry about okay what is happening in the back end, how it's the settlement happens. It's just a web 2 interface where you go and see okay on my LP interest which I have invested, like let's say uh, $1 million, I have uh, 50% LTV for 6 months. So you can literally click borrow, and then you have you collateralize your digital certificate. So it's all happens seamlessly on chain. So you don't have to go and move into a DeFi or take your digital token moved into wallet, then connect to a DeFi protocol and then pledge it there, collateralize it. All these things we have removed because one of the most important thing for any product to get successful is a simple user interface, and don't give them a more like more tough parts to go through and then do the transactions. It should be very simple and easy, and what people are actually used to. Web to
Yeah,
interface, everyone is used to. So that's how
Yeah.
we.
yeah, makes sense. So that's interesting. So I guess the narrative currently in the marketplace, obviously you're doing tokenization a little bit differently than what most people do. You're tokenizing the asset and the underlying data in a unique process and providing liquidity more from a lending borrowing perspective. What's the narrative today in the marketplace? Everybody's just kind of tokenizing the asset only. Is that kind of how people are looking at it? But this is obviously different in how
Yeah,
you're approaching it.
yeah. So if you look at the way people have so far taken the approach of in this market from since 2016, everyone has taken this approach that okay, you take an asset, tokenize it, and then somehow the liquidity will come. So you will take this asset, put into an ATS, and people will come and trade. But eventually, so far, nothing has happened. And if you look at my personal belief is it will never will happen. The reason why is so all these are illiquid asset, and the reason why they're illiquid asset is they their intrinsic value of these assets are not volatile. So they're not changing every day in, day out. Like take an example of real estate fund. The value of the real estate fund will not change like daily, correct? So even if you take that fund, let's say $100 million, and make it into a smaller token like REITs, and then put it on chain, and people wants to trade, there's not much volatility, and trading will not happen because the price are not changing. If the price is not changing, there is no interest for a market maker to come into and uh, make the market. If there is no market maker, then there will be no liquidity. So eventually, this is what has happened so far, that people have tried to tokenize it, try to put on uh, ATS, and there's zero liquidity. But there is other way to bring liquidity in this market, which is the traditional way which people have done. Illiquid asset like your house, you can go and collateralize your equity in your house and you can get loan like a HELOC. Similarly, if you have the fund, private fund, you've invested in a private fund, it has some underlying assets, you should be able to borrow against that. But the problem is, the reason why it's not easy to do it is because the nature of the fund. Funds are private and the data is private and nobody is sharing your data. So if I am an LP in a fund and I go to a bank and say, hey, I want to borrow against that, bank will not go to the private fund and ask all the
Right.
information and then collateralize that asset, correct? So there
That's
should be an easy way to do it.
yeah.
That's where the whole tokenization concept comes. So you take the data, package into one on chain, and then enable lenders to look into that asset. What is the current value? What was the past value? Future, like all these things you can do. You can do the due diligence, and you can
Yeah,
enable borrowing.
that makes a lot of sense. So the lender could see, let's just say, if just for an easy example, a liquid equity hedge fund was tokenized, the lender is going to be able to see the value of those current assets. So almost giving them the ability to kind of make that market
Yeah, exactly.
and
That's
provide a
interesting.
loan base in that. And then the other side of that, I had a question in terms of like margin calling. So, we tokenize these assets. I want to take a loan out for whatever it is, 50%, 80%. Um, I guess since that all that data is on chain, there's no problem with margin calling. Maybe you need to, re up.
Yep, exactly. So the way it's done is like, first of all, these are illiquid assets, so there's not much volatility. Take an example of real estate fund, and then once you do the borrowing lending, you generally start with a lower LTV. So you'll start with like 40% LTV, and then based on your performance, when you pay more, then the LTV can go up. But eventually, yes, if there's the price somehow there is a price fluctuation, it drops more than that, then there is a capital call. So the LP can basically top up and then match the value.
And then
That's
this
very
does
interesting.
provide like maybe the option as well for a secondary market where, I want to buy your shares from you. Um, in terms, I guess in terms of the secondary market, my question would be, does somebody have to already be like AML KYC, for
Yeah.
that to work, or kind of how do you think about that? Yeah.
So yeah, all these are digital securities. So it need to be KYC, AML, and accreditation. So the way it happens is we call it equity swap. So let's say there is a fund which has a pool of 500 LPs. One of the LPs wants to exit, so opens the position that okay, I want to exit, and you can customize this. You can say, hey, I want to exit at 10% discount, right? All the rest of the LPs can see this and then decide who wants to buy it. So if someone buys, you basically swap that equity on chain, and then once that is done, of course it has the approval process built in for the GPs and all. Once that is done, then administrators are updated and the transfer agents are updated. So you can do that. Or there is a new LP coming in. They go through the KYC, and once they come in, they see okay, either I can invest or I have few open position. I can buy those at the discounted rate. So you can do that too. So that's how it's built in. So you have both opportunities.
That's very cool. Yeah, that's a unique process. Kind of what
Yeah,
LP know about it these days. Yeah.
Um,
Let's kind of maybe switch gears here to go talk about AI and kind of how the marketplace thinks about that. Obviously, that's the other service you provide. Maybe talk about kind of what that looks like from your perspective. Um,
right. Let's talk about the AI perspective. So one of the thing in the AI space, and especially in the enterprise AI, and if you look into the finance world, one of the big problem is like it's always the big problem is your data. So it, is your data private or not? No one wants to, no enterprise, or either it's a financial or non-financial, no enterprise wants to share their data outside their uh, boundaries. And there are a few reasons for that. One is, of course, you are concerned that it's private data. Second, if that data is shared somehow to someone else and leaked or hacked, the responsibility comes back to the enterprise. So nobody wants to do that. So now, if you have your private data and you want to build AI applications using the today's large language models and all, the problem is you need to have a private custom LLM built in for your private data set. If you don't do that, then if you're using out of the box services, then there is highly likelihood of that you will expose your private data to different companies. So that is the one of the biggest challenge in building. Otherwise, yes, like take an example. If your organization has, let's say, uh, ChatGPT enabled for everyone, and then anyone can go and ask any question, upload any documents, say summarize this, and then eventually what is happening is all data is exposed. When ChatGPT came into picture, it's like a lot of enterprises were not aware of this, so it was like very common. People going into your organization just started log into ChatGPT, ask questions, and dump some documents, summarize that thing, and eventually you're exposing everything to everyone in the world.
Right. How
So
much does this person make? Like,
exactly.
So that's interesting. So it's not ChatGPT that you're talking about here. You mentioned large language model (LLM). Um, that's more private. Maybe explain kind of what that is
Yeah.
and how that it keeps things private from a
So there are two
perspective.
approaches mostly the people have companies have taken in this space. One is they're large organizations like PwC, you name it. They have their own JP Morgan. They have their own private large language models, which they use the open source language models and build their own private LLM, trained it on their own data set, and that is all inside their organization. So it doesn't go outside. And then it has the restrictions because now it has the permissions layers. So who can ask what questions? It has permissions built in the AI that what type of questions it should answer. So it's all restrictive, but at the same time, the whole purpose of the utilizing AI is productivity. So it provides you the productivity, but at the same time, it has the corporate governance built in. So it takes care of that part. So you're not exposed to any kind of outside vulnerability. So that is the large organizations taking place. The other part is the startups. Like there are startups who are building, like one of the companies which we are building these services is enabling the same type of infrastructure for the organization who cannot build this today. Because to build this, it takes first of all a lot of time, energy, money to build the entire private LLM for your own private organizations. So that's where the opportunity is we saw, because now we can build a similar thing for your own private LLM infrastructure, and then any startup can use it. Any financial organization can use that for their own purpose. So that's what we do. So we, whenever okay,
So I'm not sure where we left off, but
I
so
think
thinking
it's all
about,
about.
go ahead.
Mhm. I think where we left off was the private LLM.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so so let me start again. So basically, there are large corporations who are building these all private LLM for their own organization. Now, if you take the same thing and try to think about the smaller organizations, if they want to do this and want to leverage the similar thing, it's very hard to do that. Of course, you need talent, you need money, you need uh, time to build all these things. So that's where the opportunity is for the startups. So like startups like us, where we are building the same which a large corporation have for a smaller organization. So what we have done is we take a private LLM model, then we take your private data, do a transfer learning on that one, provide the permissions of your organization, and all the bells and whistles that what are the organization corporate policies are, so that it can basically give you answers, but within the boundaries of the corporations, corporate governance, and then we enable that in a private tenant for your organization. So there's two approaches to that. A lot of organization in which space we work, they are not even cloud-based solutions. They don't have. They're mostly on-prem solutions. So that infrastructure piece is very important in those cases, because think about, you are trying to build a cloud application and going to a large organization, but they're still using on-prem solutions. So how you are going to deploy these things, correct? So that those are the things which are challenges in the space, but we have decided to start taking those challenges from the day one, because this is how we have built in my past and my team. So the way we have built is like we can deploy it in your private cloud or your on-prem solution, but you can have the similar kind of AI capabilities with all the corporate governance and guardrails, and then you can achieve the productivity which any large organization can achieve utilizing these things.
That's interesting. Yeah, and actually, so I saw the recent AMA white paper that had a few interesting statistics in there talking about using AI. So 86% of fund managers allow their staff to use AI tools for whatever productivity things they're doing in house, right? But the challenges they see are, I think, the three top challenges they had outlined were one, data privacy and security, two, inconsistent responses, and three, staff training. You're saying basically, you create a private model that alleviates the first challenge, which is the data privacy and security. What about like, you know, obviously we're talking about
Yeah,
ChatGPT. People think about that when they hear AI. The one of the misconceptions is, well, it's not accurate. It's inconsistent.
yeah.
It's so how do what are your thoughts on that
Yeah,
challenge?
actually, you're absolutely right. So these large language models, which people use generally, have always seen that, okay, it's called hallucination, AI hallucinate, and one of the reasons for the hallucination of these large language model is not that the model is stupid or doesn't know anything, but is that the model knows too many. So it's trained on the entire world knowledge, and then when you ask a question, prompt a question, and if the model don't have exact accurate answer, we will try to find the closest answer, and that's where the hallucination happens. The whole purpose of the this large language model or generative AI is it generates something new. And how it's generating something new is basically it's predicting the next word. What is the next word when you type something? So you type a prompt, you try to predict more accurately exactly about that prompt which you have asked. So in these cases where you have too much information and then you ask question, sometimes you get the wrong answers, which is close enough, and that's where the hallucination happens. Now you take the same concept and put into enterprise architecture environment. Now, when you start using this and then you ask questions, all these things, and then you get wrong answers because now it knows everything, but it doesn't know about your organization, correct? That's where the transfer learning techniques comes to the picture. So what that means is like we take the private model, and then you basically you do a transfer learning on your specific data set. So when you do a specific, take your own data set of your own organization and train the model, then when you ask questions, the model have a concept of about what is your organizational data, and what basically it can associate your prompts with that data set. So then when you ask question, the chances of hallucinations goes dramatically low. That's how most of the people have achieved in a private environment to reduce the hallucination problem.
Very
Yeah,
cool. Okay, yeah. So that's a big misconception out there. Obviously, we're not talking ChatGPT here. You said that obviously has too
Yeah,
much information. They're trained on their specific business data set, their knowledge base internally. That's how you kind of solve for that,
yeah,
which is
you can. Yeah, you can take like large language model from Llama 2, from which is open source from Facebook. It's trained on like entire world again knowledge base, and you can start using it. But when you use it in a private environment, in your enterprise, of course, if you don't do the private uh, training like transfer learning, most likely it will hallucinate because it has zero concept of your private data. It was trained on the entire world data, but not your specific data set in your organization.
okay.
yeah.
Got it.
Now, in terms of, I think it would be helpful, maybe talk to us about some of the client types that you guys work with and what type of data that you guys are feeding to this large language model.
Yeah. So As I said, like we use open source models and the data. We work with the. Let me take this pause and step back. Yeah, so we work with open source models, and the approach which I've taken is a multimodal approach. So you have multiple open source models, and the training which we do, the transfer learning, is basically on the specific data set of that particular client. So most of the what happens is there's two-step process. Once you have an open source model, and it's also you do a training on of that model on the open source financial data. So it's basically aware of the okay, what is the concept of financial infrastructure? Like to give you an example, if you ask a model to tell me what is the IRR on a fund, correct? At that time, if the model is not trained on financial data, it will not understand exactly. And most likely, like if you go to a really good model like ChatGPT or it will tell you. But if you take a private open source model and you ask these questions, it will not tell you what is IRR. In most cases, it will tell you what is the internal rate of return, but it cannot calculate that, uh, that actual IRR. So if you want to do actually get the most productivity from these models, that's where the real training comes in the picture. So you take the financial data of that particular organization and you train the model. So the model has now the entire world knowledge. Then second, it knows the financial data because it has been trained on the financial data set. And then you get the last piece, which is your private data. So now when you interact with that and you ask, okay, what is the IRR of my fund? It knows what is an IRR. It knows to calculate IRR, what type of data I need. And then we'll pull that data, do the calculation and show you. So that's the difference between training a private model for a specific a domain versus using a general model.
That
That's
makes
interesting.
sense.
Yeah, yeah.
And so
Um,
I guess with that, so like the type of data you guys are feeding it is, the funds, maybe the funds holdings, maybe
Yeah,
some like investor data that the fund admin would be interested in. Uh, could you kind of give us some scope on what type
yeah,
of data that your clients are in need of?
yeah. So they're basically, as I started in my first question, that all this data are like three main data. One is your GP, LP, and the asset. So now GP, LP data is pretty standard. You have PPM subscription who have signed what are the their information. But then the main data is about the asset. So if you look at the asset, then you have asset. What is the underlying asset? That data. What is the asset performance, past performance, and then what are the fund performance? So fund leverage and all those things. So all these data eventually comes into the model. So then when you ask questions, two things happens. One, you need to understand who is asking questions, correct? That's where the GP, LP, and all this data comes in the picture. So as an LP, you ask, hey, what is my investment performance? It knows that you are an LP and you have invested in XYZ uh, in the fund, then it will give you the performance of that. And if you ask as a GP, what is the performance of the fund? You don't even have to like overall fund. You understand that okay, you are a GP, you have access to everything, and you are asking for the overall performance. And then you can narrow down and say, okay, give me more specifics. Like for example, let's say your portfolio consists of five different multi-story buildings in different cities. And when you ask this question, what is my uh, uh, AUM looks like. It will do the calculation and give it to you. But now when you ask, okay, give me one specific about the property, then it will go into that and give you the specifics of that. That okay, what is the current NOI on the property? What basically the asset? Who is the tenant? What is the lifetime of the tenant? What is the lease contract? Everything. So that's how you can like drill down to any specific question, and then it will give you all the answers, which is very hard to do if you are not if you are in a think about there's no AI tool available. Then you have to either create custom reports for these things, or you have to always create a dig down into your data set, looking where this is, and then creates the reports. So that's
Yes.
the difference.
Yeah, it's interesting. So you're getting from an admin perspective, you're getting the portfolio accounting activity. So the NAV
Yep.
package, you're getting all that information. You have the LP partnership accounting activity there, subscription documents, PPM, all that stuff is going into your workflow, if you will. Uh,
Yep.
it's
Exactly.
being trained on that information. That's interesting. Okay. And maybe stepping back. So there's a lot of interesting things. You talked about data. You talked about kind of the model that you have is private. What about, so you're thinking about the current state of the private fund space, right? Even fund administration. It's very much, fragmented, data silos, inefficiencies, various different legacy systems that people are using, right? So what are some main use cases that your clients, whether it be fund administrators or private funds, are using? What's the most impactful that you've seen from your experience?
Yeah, it's a actually very good question, because a lot of people focus on the impact. When they're using these AI tools, what they're looking for, how I can get a big impact on my either bottom line or top line, but eventually it all boils down to the productivity. So if you look from our client perspective, what we have learned so far is one of the big problem in the fund admin space, which you guys are much more knowledgeable than me, is one, most of the systems are legacy systems. Second, most of the things are done in a manual way. So this whole business is all about workforce heavy. So you ask one specific question, you'll go back to your team. There's a bunch of people working on that, and then you'll get back. So it's like not a lot of automation, and all those things are not. So it's still a very, I would say, uh, human heavy industry, which is good. It's not that the AI is coming to take over all the world and they'll take the job. It's about how to bring that productivity in that uh, workforce. So now, when you start using it, how you when you hire when you bring a new client, you don't have to hire new people. Your same workforce can serve now 10 more clients than what used to. So that's the kind of impact that everyone is looking from these tools, that how I can basically impact my capex with this. But
Makes
now when you take a step back and then think about, like, when you try to implement these things, where are the challenges? The challenges goes back to the same thing which you were talking about, that most of these things are sitting into silos, uh, unstructured format, and then there's this a very common term in the fund industry is like people use tools for one specific thing, and then the other specific thing they will use another tool, and then eventually you basically cobble it together and then make a system. And then what happens is, because of that, your access of information is very, very chaotic. So
right.
to get one thing, you have to go into 10 more things and then get that information.
Yeah, I say that administrators, they look at one problem and solve it with one solution. They don't look holistically at the entire life cycle of the fund operations, right? They see one issue and they try to challenge it with one technology, and the challenge is obviously a lot of systems and software are sold by asset class too. So there's not a good integration
Yeah.
framework that happens across the entire ecosystem, right? So to your point, yeah, there's that data friction with different systems, different tools, and they try to stitch it all together, which could be a challenge. I guess so. From your kind of your current client base, what are some use cases that you've seen kind of recently that made an
Yeah.
impact?
So a few of the use cases which we are seeing is mostly all these use cases are related to productivity. So clients receive questions from like the GPs and LPs, and then eventually they have to go back and then give it to their team, and then they come back. So what happens in this case, they don't know what is the dollar value of that question. Now, why? Because when you have one question can be answered in like 1 minute. That information might be right there, but the same question could be like a 10-day job, because you never know what type of question is they're asking. So, but since you don't know, so you cannot put the dollar value on that one, but you have to serve for the client, correct? So that is very common problem with the most of the admins. That's where they want to solve this with this productivity tool. So now you have a productivity tool. When a question is asked, you know exactly how much time it will take. So you can always box into that. And that also create a new revenue source, because now you can say, okay, we will serve you n number of questions. You ask custom reports or custom solution, and then that will be the price for this one. And now you can easily price it, because you know that, okay, I don't have to ask my 10 people team to work on this for 5 days. You know that it will be done in a maximum a day, because you get the answer, finished answer, and then you might have to iterate over it, because human in loop is always important in
Sure.
any of these
Right.
I mean,
solutions.
even something simple like an LP reaching out saying, "Hey, could I make a redemption?" And then somebody has to go through the PPM or their documents and say,
Exactly.
you know, hey, you can't redeem until this period of time, but the AI already has that data, so they can answer that right away.
Right.
Absolutely. So these are like some productivity issues which the clients are looking for. Other is for the internal operations. Like one of the common stuff for most of the admins are RFPs. So they go to uh, basically bid on the new uh, uh, business. But now for that, there's literally a team of people in your organization who is working on those RFP, because each RFP need to be very custom and very purposefully designed so that you can win that customer, because literally you are competing with 10 people.
Right.
Uh, but now the same productivity tools, you have all your uh, basically organization knowledge base in one place, and you have this new client, you know what their performer are, and you can put into this productivity tool. You can ask the question that fill this RFP custom for this particular client. You have a ready solution, and then you can basically brainstorm on that, customize it whatever you want. But now your 90% job is done. Your last mile problem is always human in loop. You do that thing, and then you're ready. That again saves a lot of time. So you can basically think this way as FTP, like your full-time employee cost, and then literally you can measure based on how many full-time employee work for how many hours to produce one RFP. And now you can take a tool which can basically do the same thing in less than a like minute,
Yeah,
ideally.
that's awesome because I mean that's been the bane of many uh, conversations I've had and experiences with RFPs in the past. We kind of call it in the space like RFP triage, right? Does it really make sense for to bring all the personnel to kind of answer all these questions? If because then you still got to we don't know if we're going to win the deal, right? So it takes so many hours out of the team's time. Operations team gets pulled in to answer some questions, across the entire organization. Now,
Yep.
if you kind of have streamlined that and it's all updated in real time, it's trained on the company's data, all the number of employees, all the different specifics of the business, fund admin business, that really kind of streamlines that, which is awesome to think about. That you can kind of pull that through a workflow and update it in real time, and it saves time for the team to have to pull away from what they're doing, their daily work, and just it creates just more of almost like a review process. Is what I'm hearing you
Yep.
say, which is pretty amazing. What are some other maybe use cases that you're excited about that maybe people haven't taken advantage of yet, but are some interesting ones that you potentially see? Obviously, we looked at your website. You have compliance and a couple other things that would be interesting, especially with all the different aspects of compliance that are being pushed to both the fund admin side and fund managers with new rules coming out.
Yep.
That's
So one of the absolutely, you nailed it. The like, as the whole SEC new rules are coming. Um, One is your private fund rule, which is new, but now everyone has to do it. But most of the admins, auditors, and all, they have no idea how to pull all these information, because again it goes back to the same problem where the data is, correct? And you have to sit and design those for each funds you are managing. So you have like 200 funds. Think about like how much work and time and energy you're going to put it to create those things. But now if you have, what does the report structure look like, correct? But the problem is where the data is. That's where the problem is. Now the same goes, it goes back to the same problem statement of RFP. So you can actually create a custom private fund template which can pull all this information and again can do the 90% of the job, and then you take that and review it and then you do it. But now you can do it for all 100 funds or 20 funds, how many funds you have, at a speed which was not possible earlier. So that is one of the use cases. Second use case is like now the data security, which is coming passed by the SEC, goes back to again same thing. Your data, how you want to put the privacy around that data, that who has permissions to access this data. Again, in that data privacy, which is coming from the SEC, there are two parts. One is of course on the networking side, how you can protect your information and data cybersecurity. But that cybersecurity has a second part which is related to our businesses, all about the data privacy. Who has access? How you can provide access to the people, and what are the logs you can see? Who have access what? So all these things. Once you have this data infrastructure in place, it can do all sort of these jobs because eventually everything starts from the data. So if you have that data in a one single place, that that's where the funded data platform comes in the picture. It's in one platform, then you can do all these different kind of use cases. You can solve it.
Yeah, that's. I'm assuming a lot of people. I mean, that cybersecurity rule coming down. I think it's going to be passed in April. I've heard that's going to affect everybody, right? I don't
Yeah.
think people are prepared for that. I was just curious. I mean, so obviously we talked about a lot of things here about the process, data, some use cases. What? How does somebody get started when they think about AI in their business, whether they're a fund administrator or they're a fund manager? What's the first step when they think about, okay, how do I even think about implementing something like this? Getting people together, my stakeholders together, and say, hey, what's the first step? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, no, it's a very good question because if you think about this in any large organization, especially when you have old systems, legacy systems, and you already have unstructured data sitting, it's very challenging, like how and where to start with, correct? So the way we have seen it is more like uh, a pilot approach. When you go to a client or any client who's thinking about, like, let's say how I can implement these things in my organization, so the way to think about is start with a pilot approach where you pick some of the small use cases, like low hanging fruit use cases in your organization, and see, and then do a reverse engineering from that. Like, okay, this is like, for example, RFP use case, correct? So you have an RFP use case, you already may have a lot of RFP repository previously, which you have done. You can bring that data first and start utilizing that for this particular use case. And then okay, you have what type of accuracy you're receiving in those uh, from that model. And then slowly you bring more data. So it's like a step by step process. And when you start doing this step by step process, in that time, you are literally doing a discovery session with your own data in your organization, because then you know, okay, which data is where and is used for what. And then slowly that will give you a broader perspective about your data infrastructure. And then slowly you can bring all this data into one place, and then you solve the other use cases. So it's like a natural progression where you start with one simple use case, bring some data, train it, see the accuracy of that, then you bring more data, and then solve other use cases. And then you can achieve what you want to achieve, like a true AI first company kind of.
So
And
that's interesting. So what is an AI? What do you mean by AI first company? I know that's a term out there. Can you explain that?
yeah, so
Yeah.
this I think that Google started first saying that we are AI first company. And so it's all about like in your organization, how much AI is being used to get different type of work. So today, like most of the like Google, Microsoft, everyone is becoming an AI first company, because that's their from a company org perspective. Also, that's where the mandate is to go towards more AI automation, so that you can improve productivity. At the same time, you cannot like shy away from this thing, and you can say, okay, this is happening, I'll do it later. Because then if you are the speed at which this whole thing is changing, and every day new models and new innovation is happening, it's it's a light speed. So if you think about, okay, I will do this maybe next year, you might be like dead. There will be 100 other companies who will be doing this will be in front of you, other organization will be in front of you, utilizing this technology, and now you will be like way behind. So that's why every organization now try to be a AI first company, because that's where they can take the full leverage of AI, but in a more controlled environment,
Hmm.
and that will give them the real chance of survival or competing in this space.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I definitely think a lot more companies should continue to think about AI and how they can implement it. Um, I have another question in terms of implementation with let's say a fund wants to use a system like this. Um, the obvious gap is maybe their admin is also, not using the system, or maybe it's really simple. But I mean, is it as simple as an admin just dropping some of these files into, a Dropbox, or kind of how does that look in terms of the implementation side and having these multiple parties involved?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. It goes back to the same, like how you become uh, start using it and get like an AI ready company, and then become an AI first company. So if the admin is looking for these kind of solution, yes, the easy way to start with is like, and I'll give you our company perspective how we do it. We start with like a basic Dropbox solution, uh, as you said, where you can actually drop in your files like NAP package and all, and then you can basically interact on that data set and ask questions to generate reports and all those things. But that's the step one where you can do drop in the file and do it. But then for the holistic approach, that Dropbox becomes your the core data infrastructure. But the way to expose you to this thing and then get you used to, you start with that Dropbox kind of solution. So that's like an interface which gives you, oh, it's a very simple interface. I have this NAP package which is pretty standard. I receive every time, every month. So you drop in there, and then voila, you have the reports and all these things out there, correct? But then slowly we take that same approach and then integrate into all your entire organization from the backend.
That's very cool. Yeah, obviously for people who are not as tech savvy, just having a simple solution for them just to drop in files, or if they have an API, great, right? Things like that.
Yeah.
But if it's just a simple solution, that's great. Works for the admins who are using legacy systems, and fund managers are relying on the admins anyways, right? To your point, to handle the data. So it sounds like it comes a lot down to the data. You kind of discovery. You said discovery phase, figuring out where everything sits. But obviously, the first, like, what's the use case of the business, right? So they got to come up with a couple of those use cases internally for
Yeah.
them. Maybe is a little bit different. Obviously, RFP is a great. I can think of other ones like proposals, even in general, on
Yeah.
winning new deals. That process back and forth, which is interesting, right? Maybe so. We talked a lot of lighter, which is pretty fascinating. We talked about also tokenization. So, is there any kind of connectivity between AI and tokenization? Um, is there any kind of unique things for
Yeah.
both sides? But it's,
So they're like different way people are taking the tokenization and AI approach, like how the merge will happen.
mhm.
Uh, there's like two ways. One, if I talk about our company perspective, our tokenization and AI is basically the same, where it's all sit on the same infrastructure and leverage the same data set, because now you are tokenizing the asset and the data, and you are basically training a model with this data infrastructure so you can ask questions. But the other, so this is like in private fund market, correct? But other tokenization space where other people are trying to do is leveraging uh, blockchain based data for AI trainings, because now what the approach is, like you have a more uh, clean data set, as per like, because now you have a data set which is on chain, verified by validators, and then when you're training those models on that, then it's less biased, because the data which you are taking from some organization or somewhere else, it could be biased, correct? Because it's coming from some private source. But now if you take this, the data set which is on chain and have gone through a validators, bunch of validators, then the chances of having that data less biased versus the data which you have. And biasness could be anything. It's not like just a social biasness or anything. It could be number biasness, anything, correct? So when you take that particular data on chain and train the models on that one, that's better model because it's less bias. So that's the other approach which people are taking, how to merge blockchain and AI. But the one thing is challenging in this one is doing it at scale, because today uh, the blockchain is not ready to basically consume entire world of data. You cannot put it on a chain and train the models for that. It's just not ready there. So it's gonna happen, of course, but that's where the like a lot of research being done, how to use blockchain for the data layer in the tokenization space, or AI training.
Very cool. That's interesting. Um, do you see? I was maybe just thinking ahead in the future. Do you see, AI first fund administrators or AI first, fund managers kind of thinking about this? Obviously, there's a lot to think about here. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I would say uh, a lot of fund managers and administrators are looking into the space. And if you think about, the AI is being used in the like hedge funds, high frequency trading, quant models, all these things has been uh, being used by since 90s, correct? It's not that it's new. Where this new generative AI and large language model is going to make a huge impact is in the operation side of these funds. That is where the real impact is, because trading wise, yes, like today, most of the everything runs on algo trading, correct? So that's where the AI models are already built in. But now, on the fund side, you'll see a lot of operation side AI capabilities, which will change these landscape of the fund administrators, and it will be eventually good for everyone, because now you'll have more productivity. You will see better services, client services. So it will eventually impact everyone. So that's how I see that eventually the industry is going to move, and then people will become more like a AI first fund administrator, AI first fund managers, but mostly it's all operation side, mostly.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what I'm hearing is basically, fund administrators and fund managers who use AI, that can truly then provide a scalable solution, and they're going to have a distinct advantage over other service providers and funds who do not use these,
Yeah,
processes and tools that are AI driven.
exactly. If you if you're not using this, as in any industry, if you're not using AI today, you'll be way behind, because it's innovating in a very very fast pace.
Very cool.
Yeah. Well, Kumar, this has been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot just chatting with you here. Love getting your perspectives in the future. Where could people go to connect with you and learn more about DwellFi?
Yeah, so you can come on our DwellFi website. You can learn about DwellFi there. You can connect us with on LinkedIn, or you can connect us on Twitter, or X now. uh, yeah, you can email us at hi@DwellFi, and we're more than happy to discuss any opportunities or any question related to how to implement AI in your organization, or how to use tokenization, any of these things. Happy to
That's
help.
great. Yeah, well, this is awesome. This has been a great conversation. We appreciate your time, and we'll definitely put all your different points to connect with you in the show notes as well.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, guys.